Nightwing giving Artemis CPR. After 3 more breaths, he announces to someone that she's deceased. While this is all pretty emotional, how did we get here? Well, we don't know because right before this was a news broadcast about a rocket being sent off to Mars. G. Gordon Godfrey is giving another psychotic rant about how the Justice League didn't ask anyone if they wanted them to reach out to aliens. They didn't ask anyone if people wanted new Martian allies. Godfrey continues his ranting and raving to his enthralled audience, and we are brought to Wally and Artemis' apartment in Palo Alto. The former speedster is uneasily watching Godfrey's broadcast when Artemis appears, bow in hand, and ready to go off and fight. After Wally expresses how much he dislikes that Nightwing is calling her back into the fight, she leaves to meet up with the rest of the team at Mount Justice. In the very same mountain, Nightwing is explaining that Bart Allen is staying with Barry Allen's parents at the moment until they know what to do with him. Speedy, the original Roy, is currently recovering in a hospital somewhere. The team jokes that the two are both going to end up as their responsibility when Mgan and Lagon appear. A plate of crab cakes floats in front of Lagon as he tells his significant other how amazing they are. The two share an over-disgustingly sweet moment to the point where Superboy goes to leave, but he stops at the sound of the computer announcing Artemis' arrival. Everyone is excited to see her and they get ready for the debrief from Nightwing. A couple of hours later at Cape Canaveral, a woman is giving a speech about the upcoming rocket launch. Superman is hovering above the scene while Martian Manhunter is standing next to the podium ready to take questions from any reporters. This is when Godfrey shows up to question whether or not the League asked anyone other than themselves if having new alien friends is a good idea or not. Martian Manhunter steps in to defer the question and leaves Godfrey standing there like a fool before flying up to join Superman. However, it's not actually Superman and is actually Superboy, and Martian Manhunter is no other than Miss Martian in disguise. She was using her powers to keep Connor afloat while reminding him that this had to be done so no one knows that the Justice League is lacking in manpower. They enter the bioship and the rest of the team begins their check-ins. Nightwing and Artemis are in the structure next to the rocket, looking out toward the ocean where Lagoon Boy is swimming. Superboy and Miss Martian remain on the ship above and decide that now would be a great time to address their breakup. Connor complains about her using her powers to leave victims in brain-dead states, and she asks why he hasn't told anyone about it if he's so concerned. Basically, the conversation goes nowhere and they both end up feeling like garbage after. While all of this is occurring, Lagoon Boy is getting aggravated that his girlfriend is working closely with her ex while he is stuck in the ocean. He's too busy throwing himself a pity party that he doesn't see Black Manta's men bringing in some kind of launch pad underwater. After a couple more complaints, Lagoon Boy finally notices the villains that have set up camp. Nightwing tells him to wait for the rest of the team, but in a jealous rage, he freaks out and attacks without another thought. He takes out a decent amount of Manta's men before he is ultimately electrocuted and knocked out by their former teammate, Aqualad. The masked villains begin to make their way out of the ocean as Miss Martian drops in, now with self-grown gills and a tail, to help Lagoon Boy. Nightwing and Artemis rappel down from the tower they're in and make their way to the blast wall to stop the incoming army. However, they can't seem to find a moment to get over the wall with all the incoming shots being fired. Artemis quickly shoots an arrow into the air that explodes in a big flash of light, and temporarily blinds their attackers in order to make their escape over the wall. While all of this is occurring, Superboy is using the bioship to shoot any missile that gets close to the rocket out of the air. The fight continues as such until Aqualad emerges from the sea. In a quick fight, he knocks Nightwing out of the way and stabs Artemis in the stomach. We are now back to where we started with Artemis on the ground and Nightwing giving her CPR. Not long after he starts, he announces to Mgon and Connor that she's gone. Back at Mount Justice, the team mourns the passing of their friend. Connor contemplates comforting Mgon as she sits crying over her friend as well as the fact that her boyfriend has been captured by the enemy. Before he can make a move to get any closer, Beast Boy goes and hugs the Martian. Someone questions where Nightwing is, but Superboy tells them that he went to go tell Wally about Artemis. In a warehouse somewhere, Nightwing waits for Wally when someone else appears. Aqualad. Not long after, Wally also steps out from the shadows with none other than Artemis behind him. It is here that we learn that Aqualad has been undercover this entire time and faked eliminating Artemis. The four discuss what has been happening since the fighting has begun and Nightwing gives Artemis a crystal necklace. He explains to the archer that Zatanna enchanted it so that no one other than himself, Wally, and Aqualad will see the real her. The now disguised Artemis departs with Aqualad while Wally and Nightwing watch and prepare for the next steps of their plan. On episode 8, in Star City, we get to see how Speedy is recovering after being in a pod for 8 years. Oliver Queen and the clone Roy Harper are trying to bring the real Roy up to speed on what he has missed. The first thing they have to do is actually tell him that 8 years have passed since he had been captured and put in the pod. He reacts about as well as one would think. He of course freaks out that he has missed so much time without being able to fully recall what happened before he went missing. While his former partner and clone inform him that the new Roy had taken his place, he begins to grow angry at Green Arrow for not noticing that the clone wasn't the real Roy. After his outburst, Oliver exits the room and leaves the clone to talk with himself. He states he doesn't blame the clone for anything because he didn't ask to be made, and the cloned Roy exits to go find his friend. Red Arrow finds his friend hanging his head in the hospital's chapel and tells the Archer that Speedy is just upset and didn't really mean any of the harsh things he said. Green Arrow agrees and they decide they should both go speak with Speedy again. However, when they enter the room, an empty bed and an open window are all that are left behind. He is on his way to get his revenge on Lex Luthor. Back on Mount Justice, Superboy, Mal, and Nightwing are all discussing the capture of Lagoon Boy. Mal states that almost all of Atlantis is searching for Lagon and believes they will find him soon. On the other hand, Connor and Mal share their anger with Aqualad and state that they will make him pay for what he did to Artemis. Nightwing, knowing the truth, disappears before either of them can ask him anything. Connor asks where everyone else had gone and Mal says the women were cleaning up and that the younger members are down in the grotto. In the lower levels of Mount Justice, James, Garfield, Tim, and Bart are admiring the memorial hologram of Artemis and the other fallen members of the Justice League. James and Bart discuss the fact that no one remembers the original Blue Beetle, and that maybe there should be actual statues built to honor the fallen heroes. They continue their discussion about how most of the younger members have older counterparts to look up to and learn from, but he has no one. Bart sympathizes with him and then offers to hang out instead. We are brought to a cemetery in Gotham City where Wally is visiting Artemis's grave with her mother. It is here that Wally must swallow his guilt as Paula says he is all that she has left. Across the cemetery, hidden in the trees, Jade, her daughter, and Crusher Croc stand, watching Paula and Wally mourn. Jade makes it her mission to eliminate Aqualad for what he did to her sister, while Crusher claims he is going to make Black Manta pay for what he did. Apparently, in his mind, Black Manta should have asked his permission before eliminating his daughter. The two stew at the edge of the cemetery when back in Star City. Speedy is running through the streets still in his hospital gown. He had remembered a secret cache of weapons that Green Arrow had 8 years ago, and lucky for him it was still there. He enters and begins to grab supplies for his upcoming attack, but he fails to notice Green Arrow and Roy approaching the hiding spot. Red Arrow tries to scan into the cache, but the system falters, claiming that Roy is already inside. Oliver is quickly able to override it but is unable to catch Speedy in time. He manages to use a Zeta tube to escape before the two can catch him. Using the computer that is still intact, they figure out that he is on his way to Metropolis. In his main building, Lex Luthor is seen doing paperwork, completely unaware that Speedy is about to launch a missile right at the building. As the villain looks up, he sees the incoming projectile too late before it explodes. However, we don't get an answer about whether or not Speedy got Luthor before we are brought somewhere new. In another city, Connor sits alone on a bench when Wendy comes over to wish him a happy birthday. She mentions how Emgon used to throw him surprise parties every year and how as much as he fussed he secretly loved them because it was love being shown by his girlfriend. The two almost share an intimate moment, but we are tossed to a completely different city where Zatanna and Emgon are walking down the street. They are discussing how throwing a party for Connor shouldn't be a priority with Artemis passing and Lagoon Boy's capture. They end this conversation as they reach their destination, a bridal shower for Rocket. That's right, a party. They sit down with Rocket, Bumblebee, Batgirl, Black Canary, and Wonder Girl, who are also all in their civilian clothing. After toasting Artemis, the party continues when a random villain dressed as an ice climber shows up. All he does is throw ice everywhere and immediately notices his upcoming defeat when the heroic women appear all in uniform. Back in Metropolis, Speedy is still trying to eliminate Lex Luthor. He traps the villain in the parking garage at the bottom of the building and a fight between Speedy and Mercy ensues. It is honestly the longest and most repetitive car park fight that has ever been created, and nothing really happens. At the end of it, Green and Red Arrow appear just in time for Speedy to exit the smoke-filled garage with a metal case. He opens it and shows them a new, metal arm that is equipped with plenty of fire powers before informing him that he's no longer Speedy. He wants to call himself Arsenal.